Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Returns to Africa. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Once again, I really do apologize for the camera looking a little glitchy. I'm still working on trying to resolve the issue, but let's never mind that for right now, and let's continue with our episode. Getting back. Into the world of chimpanzees, or pan troglodytes. But before we continue, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button, check out my Facebook page for content on conservation, and if you have a question about animals in general, feel free to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in the description below. But if you're ready, let's get started. But before we start off with our usual trend, I want to kind of take us back a little bit from last week's episode. No. Right here. I want to apologize for I felt a little rushed to be able to do this episode this part for you guys. Their influence in human culture. You know, I'm kind of excluding all the cartoon chimps or even some other chimps. Not that it's not important, but just that's not what I want to focus on. A crazy example I would mention would be that chimpanzee named Ham, who was said to be the first hominid to be sent up into space. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about here in Africa. There have been many creational myths and folklore that says that chimpanzees were once thought to be humans that ran back into the forest so they could escape from societal responsibilities, so to say. And in certain regions in Africa, it's considered to be, since these animals are highly revered and are seen as totemistic, it is considered to be highly taboo for hunting these animals due to some kind of ancestral lineage or as perceived intelligence. But that's just the folklore. But either way, it does seem to give them a good sense, right? Okay, all right, take it easy. Now, don't worry. Just here's the first early wild thing about chimpanzees. You might hear them all going screaming and hollering. You really want to do your best to kind of stay back, because that could mean that they're having a little bit of a disagreement. But believe it or not, sometimes that can be a chimpanzee's way of saying, "Hey, it's you! It's good to see you again." Hey, you know what they say. There's always some show off at every party. Now let's get back to the seriousness, the wild things. You know, chimpanzees are pretty remarkable all around. I mean, they have one of the best, they are pretty intelligent, so intelligent enough, they're actually among some of the very few animals that can actually recognize their own image. A number of tests in specialized human settings as well as out in the wild, some people have actually placed mirrors in there, and at first the chimpanzees react, but then they begin to realize, oh, this isn't a stranger, that's me. It's doing the same thing that I'm doing. Pretty cool, huh? Because not every animal really reacts the same. Chimpanzees, you want to go to an arm wrestling match? Don't count on it. These guys are 6 to even 7 times stronger than the average human. So, like I said, you're probably not going to want to challenge them to an arm wrestling match. Their brain size, once upon a time, the early human ancestors, which was a species once called Australopithecus, which I have mentioned once in my Safari Mack Extinct Files series during my time at Chicago's Field Museum. One time, the Australopithecus's brain was said to be no bigger than a chimpanzee, so we were on our way to being human, but we weren't quite there yet. But now, the chimpanzee's brain is pretty amazing. The increase in their brain size is thought to actually be because how 60% of their diet is fruit and nuts, and among some things, sweet figs, which actually seems to increase their brain size. They are known to actually self-medicate themselves, believe it or not. The chimpanzee has the rainforest at its disposal as the world's greatest pharmacy. I mean, if we're able to discover new cures and new medicines in the rainforests, whether it's America, in South America, Central America, Africa, Asia, Australia even, why can't the chimpanzees be our guides? They are able to use different plants as a way of healing themselves, either by chewing it, sucking on it, whatever they have to do. Believe it or not, here's another pretty wild thing. We know that the chimpanzee is among some of the very few animals that are known to use and make tools. But did you know they actually have a way of storing them? They can find an area and they can make tools and then hide them away in an area, and then when it's time to find food, whether it's termites or ants or even nuts, they can go back to that certain spot where they hid them and bring them back out, kind of like it was its own cupboard. Now, unfortunately, despite their popularity and despite their intelligence, chimpanzees, whether now or even back in Jane Goodall's time, sadly, chimpanzees are facing many different threats. Deforestation, loss of habitat, fragmentation of their habitat, and poaching are huge, widespread, and devastating problems. But it really, I mean, for one, losing their habitat is already bad enough because they're losing not only space to roam, but also some important food sources that maybe can only be gotten to at certain times of the year. But by closing off, by creating these huge gaps and circling areas where they are able to still exist freely, that can lead to major problems, especially in terms of the gene pool preservation. But poaching is a real problem. Poachers often capture chimpanzees alive and sell them as to be where they might kill their mothers, sell them as pets, maybe sell them to other institutes. It's just barbaric. Let me ask you something. If this animal really does share 98% of our genetic material, doing this to these incredible animals, what does that say about our own species? What does that really say? But there's another major problem with, besides the capturing them alive. Sometimes these chimpanzees are killed for the bushmeat trade or to even sell their parts on the illegal underground market, where they can fetch really high prices. And then here's another major problem. Because chimpanzees and other apes and primates, basically gorillas, orangutans, monkeys, all of those, because they're very much closely related to us, they are also susceptible to diseases. I can only just imagine right now with the Ebola breakout going on in Africa right now, how many chimpanzees might actually die because of this disease. And they don't have access to vaccinations like we can send over to them, to the people in Africa. But another major problem is when these animals and humans come into close contact, and conflict between the species is inevitable. Now, of course, there are many ways that we can preserve the species. Many people are working hard to help protect and preserve chimpanzee habitat. Education, reforestation, and of course, a lot of this probably wouldn't have been possible if it has not been for the Jane Goodall Institute, where here Jane Goodall believed, and I believe, that there is a way that both humans and the natural world can coexist. When we stop and we remember that we are not separate, but just a part of the natural world, and that all deserve to be lived, and that everybody does have a purpose, as she once proudly said before her time, then I think we as a species do have a better fighting chance. Join me next week as we look for a very elusive animal, but I'm not going to say what it is yet. But until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you out there.